modern society, radios are common technology in the cars and in the homes. In fact, in today's world, one would be hard-pressed to find anyone who has not heard of, seen, or used a radio during his or her lifetime, regardless of how old or young they may be. This is not always the case, however. Before the 19th century, wireless radio communication in everyday life was a thing of fantasy. Even after the development of the radio in the late 1800s, it took many years before radios were mainstream and became a household fixture. The history of the radio is a fascinating one that changed how the world connected and communicated from distances both far and near. While the radio enjoys a long, interesting history, its earliest beginnings are still quite controversial. There's some debate as to who actually invented the radio. While we may not know with certainty who put together the first radio device, we do know that in 1893 the inventor, Nikola Tesla, demonstrated a wireless radio in St. Louis, Missouri. Despite this demonstration, Marconi is the person most often credited as the father inventor of the radio. It was Marconi that was awarded the very first wireless telegraphy patent in England in the year 1896, securing his spot in radio's history. A year later, however, Tesla filed for patents for his basic radio in the United States. His patent request was granted in 1900, 4 full years after Marconi's patent was awarded. Regardless of who created the very first radio on December 12, 1901, Marconi's place in history was forever sealed when he became the first person to transmit signals across the Atlantic Ocean. Let me share with you a timeline of events in the history of the radio. I'm Celeste Croslin, and this is the history of the radio. In 1892 to 1893, Nikola Tesla wirelessly transmitted electromagnetic energy. He made the first public demonstration of the radio in St. Louis in 1893. In 1896 to 1897, Marconi filed for patent protection of his radio apparatus. He established the Wireless Telegraph and Signal Company in 1897. In 1902, amateur, known today as ham, radio introduced to the USA by a Scientific American article on how to construct an effective wireless telegraphy apparatus at a small cost. In 1906, Reginald Fessenden was the first to transmit a program of speech and music. In 1910, first radio transmission from an airplane was made. In 1917, all U.S. radio stations that weren't needed by the government were closed as World War I began. In 1922, the first on-air advertisement was carried by a New York station. In 1926, the first permanent national network, NBC, was formed. And CBS followed a year later. In 1933, FDR broadcast the first of his 30 fireside chats. In 1938, CBS Radio broadcast H.G. Wells' classics The War of Worlds, although most listeners understood that the program was a radio drama. The next day, headlines reported that thousands of others, perhaps millions or more, plunged into panic, convinced that America was under a deadly Martian attack. In 1947, cellular radio telephony with call handoff and frequency reuse was conceived at Bell Laboratories. In 1954, Texas Instruments produced the first commercial transistor radio, launching the portable electric age. And that is a brief history of how we got our modern day radios.